the United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation fourth and final community Zoom conversation about Belizean Garifuna Ourstories. Taking a deep breath, a me one with African ancestresses and ancestors, and everybody will choose to join me or listening later. I'm definitely have called upon way. Spirit people for date me this morning that I always want challenge for me when I don't have one guest. But I accept the challenge. I could only get to one guest but after I talked to another Garifuna sister and this one sister where they work with the national or affiliated with the National Garifuna Council since I'm a preteen and now I'm adult in her 50s. And in talking with she and she confirming where she don't know. I say, I know enough for have this conversation. UEF for the third year have these Zoom community conversations called Belizean Garifuna Ourstories because to my memory, I talk with other people, they say that they never hear one public conversation or invite other people to participate in telling the story of the Garifuna people, plural Garinago, and how they came to be. And because November 19th, the Garifuna Awareness Day, I want to take note, stop use the word settlement, that I know the wording that's being used now is Garifuna Awareness Day. That why in November we start to have these conversations. Usually we invite one Garifuna person for reason for about half an hour, and then the other people will join the Zoom link. Could participate in the next half an hour in our Zoom community meeting. We guessed last week never show up, so I never know I show up, so I had to wing it, and it was touch and go for me. I know enough because I study regularly, so I just never prepared. But this week I got and I get prepared, and I should have been one more cohesive conversation and a very clear on what we want to talk about this morning. I have to give a lot of thanks to my inner circle who support me, especially to Zing Fence and Krista Flores in particular, the Master Chief Operator, because I like have evidence-based conversation. And I just need for not to center the conversation upon me. I intentionally tap my personal business because I have one public life, so I keep my personal business tight. Most of us born curious. As beings, we're born curious, and because we don't know who we are as beings, most of we get defined by other entities or systems or institutions. So, like for example, we the identifiable African descendants racialized as Black people, but we have European names. So, I to the other people give you your identity, and you don't know who you. So, to frame the conversation today, African descendants, and the word African is used because that a word where is recognized with the people from a particular continent. For we people identified based on their nations or groups of people, wherever they come from that particular landmass known today as the continent of Africa. So we're the first people documented, research proven on planet Earth, African descendants racialized as Black people. So that's a bigger story, thousands of years, at least over 6,000. The enslavement of African people is an interruption of our story, about 500 years, and the enslavement continues mentally for most of it. So I just want to frame that. And so the conversation today, the things that I want to focus on specifically, and I have to hail up my sister Musli, who has been an excellent sounding board, and my brother Jerry Enriquez, excellent sounding board, because you could read anything over and over, listen to videos, and still not get the essence of it. So for the past 3 Saturdays, which would be November 9th, 16th, and 23rd, XTV has been kind enough to broadcast this Zoom conversation, and so you have one wider reach, and it's being broadcasted on FB, Facebook. So you could go to YouTube, XTV Belize, and and Facebook, XTV Belize. So I mean, they say that we are naturally curious people. So if your curiosity not get beaten out of you. If you not get erased or pushed down, then you will have as you're growing to one young adult and then maturing to a seasoned adult, you'll have one good sense of who you are as a person. Our parents are community oriented. Our father was first generation higher education. To my knowledge, the only certified land surveyor that believes in that Hokumai England. But we come from parents who are avid readers, active community members. I would describe our mother, who is now my greatest ancestress, Jean Hyacinth Veronica Davis Marin, Davis Bank people, as a oral historian and community activist as a way of life. And with that, the same. So at the sale of that, to say, even before I get introduced to what I call formal education, I come from a home where value learning and valued me as a human being. Out of our three sisters and out of the four, our parents had four daughters. I had the one where that is most melanated, and I would say I have one different level of awareness from my other sister. So, but all of my sisters are now community activists, community organizers in a different capacity. The reason why I take the time to share all of that this morning, that for say, before I get indoctrinated in a miseducation, I came from a home where value learning. So coming from that and then going in a miseducation system, which then called the formal education system, a lot of my experience had to do with creativity. So for I like four at a past stage, people in Ghana, Miss Hall, Free School, for Wagner's Lane, know that our way of life, right? Our learning through creative actions. So by the time I finish primary school, the All Saints, I start at St. John's the front, and then gone on to high school, failed first form, traumatized at St. Catherine's, and then gone on to King's College, co-ed Christian, traumatized again, never graduate, under house arrest, and then finish up the Belize Technical College. Oh my gosh, absolutely amazing time at Belize Technical College. So by the time I did leave the country and get exposed to more miseducation, Los Angeles State Technical College, paper in plumbing, plumbing, I know nothing about plumbing, but I got paper. But it was there that I got exposed to African history, and that was it for me. So that as I continue through life and get more colonial papers, I pick up certain skills when it comes to research. Now, because I'm born curious naturally, have one deep interest in African people and the research skills that really help in a lot of the work where I don't know. The difference between people like what did the kind of work where I do on behalf of UEF, on behalf of African descendants racialized as Black people, is that we then use the knowledge where we get in an miseducation system and we connect it to everyday life for the liberation of African descendants racialized as Black people. That are distinctly different. So I said all that to say, because somebody said to me that I burn out colonial papers. I usually do. At the same time, while I burn out the colonial papers, I say, I have my set of colonial papers, but they're not that I just burn out colonial papers. Colonial papers just by itself meaning degrees, and not knowing who you are as a being, not having any interest in genuinely knowing who you are. Even if you started after you start to get colonial papers, it's problematic for people who do the kind of work what we do collectively for the liberation of African people. Because what happens is you just end up to chase degrees because you equate the degrees to some kind of external validation and at the same time some kind of monetary compensation. And so this goes specifically to, because with the top of the Garifuna people, they have two Garifuna words. Then ma pencile and ga pencile. Ma pencile mean have pencil, ga pencile mean no have pencil. And so how it would always explain to me is ma pencile, that what I call the one where YaYa they say, miseducated, they have colonial papers. And then they got pencil that the people that want to have colonial papers. No. If overstand with their colonial papers, known as degrees, that they're from European worldview, because most of the universities, the European universities, sort of recognize that they also have what they call historically black colleges and universities, which the two are where I graduate from. I mean, Hampton University and Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. So where you get your colonial papers from, who the people are who teach you when they go in and courses really do matter. Now, just having the papers itself, and you could graduate with a high, it not mean say that you grasp what I teach over all in time, but then apply it to your personal life and then to the communities where you come from, because the the communities you even get the opportunity to get what they call higher degree, right? So it's important for we understand that the culture oftentimes is that when people get their colonial papers, they hoard the knowledge, then benefit personally, they don't have no organization where they're attached to, they don't report back to the community in no way. And I know they say that everybody needs to come public, but the community make you who you are. So you are to, the purpose of education that will bring out what you're born in you naturally. So if you know the share, if you know the live where you gonna get your colonial papers for, then I don't know where you're gonna get it. Because the intention of making you, your family, your community have one better quality of life. Anyways, I'll talk way longer than I may expect. But I mean, just want to frame it so people understand how it is that I develop their skills, the interest, and just really depend when it comes to African descendants racialized as black people. So today we are focused on who are the Garifuna people, where they come from, what indigenous mean, and what part the Kalinago people in there today. So, my goodness, you see how I've done the sweat already. So, one of the first things I do, I ask Christy to bring up and so because of the training where I have, evidence-based conversation important. A lot of people do research, they have different positions, research done at different times, theories get affirmed, substantiated, teared down. One of the books that I use that Garifuna, A Nation Across Borders, Essays in Social Anthropology by Joseph O. Palacio, editor. They have 11 chapters. And so because of a compilation, different people write in the book and they write from different perspectives as it relates to Garifuna people. So for example, the book in two parts. They have part 1 and part 2, Chartering New Grounds in Garifuna History. Chapter 1, French Accounts of the Vincentian Carriers by Peter Hume. Chapter 2, Reconstructing Garifuna Oral History, Techniques and Methods in the History of a Caribbean People, Joseph O. Palacio. Which brings us to another thing. Because, it's a hard and tap on my pencil and pencil, because we work in the Western Hemisphere, live and be on our European paradigm, they give them, meaning culturally in your community, the establishment, give credit to people who got colonial papers. The worldview where Pan-Africanist people have is that the people within the communities, they have griots or oral historians from the continent of Africa, have the same level of confidence, knowledge, and ability to share and the research as some other colonial papers. So you don't have to have colonial papers to be one expert, to have the authority to talk, to be respected as people who got colonial papers, and for be in any space and reason with people. Be very clear, have organic community knowledge bearers. And that's one of the things why I really push back on people when I respect everyday people who have knowledge, because oftentimes people who got colonial papers couldn't get it if they never come in for we communities, interview for we people, observe for we people, follow for we people both, and then go do the degrees, and then turn expert now. Like in a 2023, no, giving an example, University of the West Indies start off with a double degree Masters of Science and Masters of Arts in Reparatory Justice. So now, where I start to see now is people who are come with degree saying that how then the expert no upon reparation. Nothing no go so, you know. Nothing no go so, you know. I not say reasoning with people and having higher knowledge, different knowledge, ain't higher knowledge, different knowledge. No matter, it's just that I just said to we that there are different bodies of knowledge. It can't just be only European ways of learning and teaching that the only way. Even before we became enslaved, African people had knowledge systems, and that the part of the call for African reparations is called cognitive justice, to say that there are other bodies of knowledge besides European knowledge or other ways of understanding what reparation is other than the European paradigm. So I tell you about that particular book. So they have one map, and I really like the map. You could bring up the map, please, Christy. The map show the region, what's known as the Caribbean region. Thank you, Christy. And I really like it because they name the different Caribbean territories. No, when me think the way I had. All right. So some of the things then where I never understand, because when you check and say what part Garifuna people come from, there are different sources. I don't know if I send this one to you, Christy, but the one where I want to read right now, that from page 138. I don't think I sent this one to the Christy. It says history of the origins of Garifuna culture inclusive of both genders. Around 1200 AD, male groups of Karen speakers, that mean the people they were the indigenous people around 1200 in the Common Era, left the coastal area present day, I don't know why this matter, present day Guyana, Suriname, Venezuela, and the Orinoco, and the Magdalena deltas. So I just want to give one time period of when the Karen speakers, who are referred to as, in this, as Caribs. Now, I want to show, Christy, can you bring up the map that shows the Orinoco region so that people could see specifically where that region is, where these original people came from? That would be, yes, thank you, Christy. So you have one better idea. This is where these original people came from. Make I read the rest of the paragraph where I put it in a context field. In vessels tree trunk that could carry 60 men. These skillful sailors reached the Greater and Lesser Antilles, which had already been inhabited by Arawak-speaking people from South America for 1,000 years. So before these indigenous people who who were Karen speakers, left from this area and gone to the went to they gone to the Greater and Lesser Antilles, and when they get there, they were already Arawak-speaking people from South America. I don't even understand what that the Greater and Lesser Antilles. So I have an image which show the Greater and Lesser Antilles, and it has to do. Thanks, Christy. It got to do with the Greater and Lesser Antilles. Now, the Greater Antilles, that the bigger islands like Cuba, Jamaica, Anguilla, Antigua, Barbuda, and then the Lesser Antilles, that the other smaller islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, St. Martin. I mean, just want people to understand where the Greater and Lesser Antilles. And then they have another wording where they use where they say the Windward and the Leeward Islands. And that have to do with the direction where the wind blow from. You could bring up that one, Christy. No, another one. You have one mountain. Thanks, Christy. So it shows that when the wind they come, let's say from the left at the mountain, that the windward side, and when they come, let's say from the right, this example they show a mountain, that the leeward side, the left side have the air cooler and the right side the air warmer. I just want to show the example because I had to read anything and it make no sense to me. So I just going to show that quickly. So what would it look upon is where the original people came from. So next we're going to bring up one article written by Joseph Palacio, Elder Joseph Palacio, I should say. And it's called How Did the Garifuna Became an Indigenous People? Now, when you bring that up, Christy going to one specific page for show a map for sure the root line of Garifuna people. So, how did the Garifuna people become indigenous? And I like this. I like this map because this will be the basis of how we find out who these people are. So, on the map, no, I can't find it. Okay, thanks, Christy. On the map, I don't know if you could see it, right? You have Arawak on the left, Carib on the right, and then what part the two lines intersecting to a V? Thanks, Christy. You have Kalinago. Now remember that the source said that 1,000 years before the word Carib, what I've come to understand is the Karen speakers. These are the Kalinago people. So the Arawak were already in the Lesser Antilles 1,000 years before the Kalinago people went there. There was a mixture, and the time to go quicker than I may expect because I never jump into it right away. And from that combination, you have the Kalinago people, right? Now, what I never know, this is something new I found out since last week. I never know that you still have descendants of these Kalinago people alive today in Dominica. You could bring up the one, the cultural survival article, what talk about the Kalinago people in Dominica. And they're the only, at least according to this article, it says, this is the Caribs of Dominica, Land Rights and Ethnic Consciousness. The last survivors of the once powerful Carib people, and like one of my sisters said, that word Carib really threw it off. The original inhabitants of most of the Lesser Antilles now live on the two eastern Caribbean islands of Dominica and St. Vincent. Now, I never see nothing which show that they have Kalinago people at St. Vincent, but if you go to YouTube, they actually have, you could see the people in, people go there as tourists and see the Kalinago people in. So that was surprising to me because I never knew that descendants of these people are still in 2024, still around. I have never heard any link between the Garifuna people and the Kalinago people, the Dominica, which I thought strange. I'm like, okay, this is one direct descendant of the Garifuna people. How come I not hear only link there? And then, I know because I don't hear it mean that I do it. And I'd also be interested in the DNA because the Garifuna identify that they come from Kalinago and African. So you have Garifuna people with 100% Garifuna, like Jerry Enriquez could trace for his lineage, like 100% Garifuna. And then you have Kalinago people where I only say 100%, I mean majority and then DNA. As far as Jerry knew, before he don't know nobody in his family. Whenever Garifuna marry Garifuna, have children with Garifuna, have Garifuna offspring. And then the same would be true for the Kalinago people. So that's something where I'd be interested in but find the linkage because, well, the Garifuna said they're from African and Kalinago people. So we get that established. The next thing I want to talk about what indigenous mean. So Elder Joseph Palacio, in an article, in the same article, How Did the Garifuna Become an Indigenous People? There's what they call, that same paper, what they call one short answer. And the short answer is, Christiana, if you could bring that up. The short answer is, let me see. What part of the short answer there? I can see if I could minimize my, that will make my life so much easier. I have pretty much all of them on my laptop. And then I just have to go and read from it. And then while Krista they bring up the information. Okay. Anyways, the short, if while I scroll and look, I know I had the page mark. I'm having a conversation about Garifuna people, their origin. Here you go. Okay, so it's page 3. Thank you, Christy. Christy, bring it up, and I don't even see it. This is an article from 2007, 2008. How did the Garifuna become an indigenous people, reconstructing the cultural persona of an African Native American people in Central America? So now going to page 3, where Christy had up just now, I read the short answer. The short answer to the question, how did the Garifuna become indigenous, is that they added the label indigenous onto themselves. They and other biocultural groups of Native American descent within the Circum-Caribbean acquired the generic term in the late 1980s. Beforehand, these people, also called Amerindians, had used their own traditional names such as Maya, Quechua, and Garifuna. The acceptance of indigenous came through the influence of indigenous activists in the political movement originating in North and Central America. One regional indicator was the formation in 1989 of the Caribbean Organization of Indigenous Peoples, by peoples in the former British colonies from Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent, Dominica, and Belize. The larger global validation came in 1992 when the COPI was accepted as member organization of the World Council of Indigenous Peoples, WCIP. The use of the designation indigenous peoples has been refined by multilateral agencies, including the United Nations and the Organization of American States. So oftentimes people will have colonial papers, degrees, oftentimes, very few have other people, but they're usually the so-called scholars and academians where from doing research and enough for their interests, and then they set up for their interests that the people would represent interests. Now, I question when people say they represent other people, how is it that you let people know I represent you? And if you get any input from them people in any way to say, I okay with this representation, I not okay with this representation, this is why I got to say about how you represent me. And one of the reasons I have questions for like these councils what we have, because talking to the people in on the ground, the only difference where in a UE, what help UEF because we got one media host. And so because we got one media host, I go and remember I just one of the people Zinc Fence did this for 55 years. I just the one baton carrier. This is nothing new was Zinc Fence do. 55 years Zinc Fence did this work. I just want the people that want to continue to work. Let's be very clear on that. And so because Zinc Fence have 55 years of advocating in the interest of African descendants racialized as Black people, the one they home, the one they run the world, you could check their mandala for 1969. I'm like, what is this stuff, bro? I mean, like the awareness, the final about African people globally and print it in their mandala newspaper. Yes. So, and I said to this current, and I said the contemporary group of people where said they advocate for African descendants racialized as Black people. That one of the things why Zinc Friends planted, rooted. Everybody could come after their 55 years, but that Zinc Fence for 55 years with great struggle and with consistent community, genuine community support. So bear in mind that the modern things where they go that the scholars and the activists, and you have European people, you have people of who identify as indigenous or African, and people have their biases when they're doing research. So this they explain, because you have to say, well, what indigenous mean? When they become indigenous, I never hear, I know here we come this past week, here come one set of people who call themselves Creole. I don't know who are the people there. They sent out one press release. There's no name on the press release. I don't know who are the people there. No, they want to say they're not indigenous. So I just to bring it full circle upon what the word indigenous, how it is that then become, Garifuna people become indigenous. One bigger part of that process of being indigenous is that when in 2000, when Garifuna people well, the scholars and activists who said I represent Garifuna people, applied to UNESCO for the, let me get this wording right. It has to do with let's see. UNESCO has established a set of procedures for the selection of masterpieces of oral and intangible heritage every 2 years. The first proclamation took place in May 2001. The third selection was finalized in July 2005. So from the National Garifuna Council, a group of people who signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Belize in 1999, said they could talk for all Garifuna people. And from that, because that for their mandate, they were approached as it relates to the UNESCO candidacy for the nomination. It says in addition, in the year 2000, the Garifuna language, dance, and music were put forward as candidates for the nomination to the United Nations Organization for Education, Science, and Culture, UNESCO, for areas of culture and forms of popular expression deserving to be considered masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Now let's start a whole series of things, right? One of them, it says, in the second case, for example, it was stipulated the government of Belize must coordinate along with the NGC and UNESCO to protect and promote the nominated culture. Now, I read it in the essence at time, I've done 1035 already. So the UNESCO candidacy that we want to sign a Awakening Consciousness for the NGC, which they find it necessary for the globalized world with a tendency towards they have a humanization, like they have one singular narrative, and then from a European perspective, and then what they call the minority culture, that for their ways of living and being get erased. So they use it as one necessary channel for the survival of Garifuna uniqueness, to say. Now, I explain all this to listeners, viewers, and I'm streaming online for understand that there's a whole system from a scholar, at least from these scholars, who in the NGC, thanks, Christy. Thanks, Christy. I love my sister. It tell me I don't have to rush, we could go overtime. So when you're on your own media house. So those who are leading the NGC at the time, when the NGC became incorporated as an organization in 1981, so like 43 years ago. So I say one of the recent, and I bring this up because I couldn't understand. I don't know, I did the research and I find something by cultural survival. I don't know the link, but this is how I find the link. So another recent action that a link, this is what the NGC to say, that a link with the non-governmental organization Cultural Survival. Cultural Survival have an interest in projecting outward to showcase the Garifuna culture and make the world more aware of its existence and value, and not only the Garifuna culture, other cultures as well. Anyways, so it goes on to tell you how Cultural Survival got formed at the beginning of 1970, a non-governmental organization out of the in 1970 at Harvard University in North America. Cultural Survival has grown to what it is today, one of the most important NGOs dedicated to cultural rights and the economic independence of the indigenous populations of the world. So, just to share what I really want with listeners, viewers, and streaming online get, that once these scholars, academians, get in remember, this are usually from a European worldview. Yes, they have their oral stories, and I say no to that. And they say value in it. Is that they get in a European system of organizing. And oftentimes, when they do the research, like their research, they write just like law, no writing our language for everyday people engaged. And so that one of the reasons why, besides paying honor and respect to the legacy of African descendants racialized as Black people, talking the Creole language, which they want a mixture of African words, facial body expressions, and the colonizers at the time in this space, the English and the English language are so Creole come both. Now I understand that English that a language of what I use for when they're writing books. They're not they don't pay attention to the people of the country that officially English is the language of Belize, but everyday people, the majority of people talk Creole. And that's one of the reasons why when I code switching mean my first language is Creole. That's my first language, that's my heart language. Because in the when you go to school, then teacher in English, most of the books that I read in English, I developed some level of proficiency in English. I don't really, English is my thing, but for read or learn or understand, but I express my, and somebody bring it to me, because I'm not aware, I live in the United States, I'm lived there for over 18 years, they talk English, I never fake my accent now, I was a Belizean accent because that's the way I raise up in. So important for me that when I share for we stories, and people, I will say, yeah, we have an international audience. What I talk to, I represent African descendants racialized as black people in Belize and the diaspora from Belize. And we talk Creole. So that's who I talk to. That's for who interest UEF represents. Now, when you go to France and then people are talking in French, if anybody else want understanding, then better get one translator, then subtitle it in the language, sometimes English. So I quite comfortable to talk in a Creole when I share. And that's the one, I find that the language, again, the colonizer language, and one of the things where make we disconnected, because if the French colonizer will talk French. If the Portuguese, then colonizer, then you talk Portuguese. And one of the things then when our language barrier. But when you talk about the area what they call the Caribbean, all of it because African descendants, African language, have, regardless of what you might want to call it, Creole, Patois, we could talk enough for we heart language, for we first language, and we understand one another good. So I really get ticked off when I get in spaces with a majority, like one Zoom conversation, majority of people from the Caribbean, they got colonial papers, and all of a sudden, none of them can talk their heart language. All them the English they want to talk. So I'm like, right away, I get you off. This is our space where we there. We can't even be with natural self. Like you could have knowledge and still talk in a language where everyday people could understand. The minute I don't feel comfortable code switching. But and even when I do it, like I do one presentation last Friday, the old Belize, because Black in Marine Science or environmental Black organization, what I want to UEF partners invite me that want to see of life 2-day conference when I recognize international women in conservation. I says one certain class of international women. And that the same thing got to Belize, one certain class of women they want to recognize. I mean, not a big friend. But I said today, I know if you have international people in, they know and they understand Creole. But I said to the organizers, again, usually they not invite those people that is space here. And Roots people talk Creole. So the minute you start to talk English, and then Roots people, well, that way, no, so we not talk English as an everyday language. And then because they ask you something in English, you try answer back in English. And then, of course, it's not grammatically correct. And then people take it, make joke, make it make meme, which I don't value. So that's why, especially to people who are working at the local media, I tell them, talk to people, everyday people in the language awareness. If they don't Garifuna community and the people that talk Garifuna, you guys pay somebody for ask the question in a Garifuna. Pay somebody for translate from Creole to English. That's a valid, that's how you show value, respect, and appreciation, and make people know, like, you're a human being just like me. Like, you know, have a code switch. You express yourself, like, that are really a challenge, because, remember now, my skills get better because I could read in a English and talk in a Creole. Like, even while I talk to it right now, like, I could read it in a English, but I could say it in a Creole because I do it for a period of time. I don't know that mental code switching. I don't know. I never think about it till just now. Anyways, so I don't point out to, you know, so you have to pay attention to who to write this information, what we to read, how that information is used, for who interests in it. So I may wonder how cultural survival, I mean, I know about them, but I may wonder how they come for beer, how the Garifuna people make link with them. Anyways. So we don't trace where the Garifuna people come from as relates to the indigenous side. Now when you look for the African side, you have more than one story. You hear about this. Now, interesting, make I say if I bring it up, There's a recent sister, what's her name? Auntie Myrtle Palacio. In 2024, one of the most recent researchers, the first primer on the people Garifuna, the first primer on the people called Garifuna, the things you have always wanted to know. And it's online. Auntie Myrtle for years have glessimerresearch.org. It's belize-glessimerresearch.org. Our excellent space to learn more about Garifuna people. It's BELIZE hyphen GLESSIMARESEARCH.org. Anyway, so you could go there, and the Glessimer Research and Services, they both on November 1993. So you could, that our local source. I find her writing more people friendly, is what I would say. And in a for she source, the table of contents got Garifuna history and introduction, arrival of the Europeans, Carib African relations, expulsions from homeland to Belize. Then you have present situation. I strongly recommend this as an introduction, or if you want broaden your knowledge about Garifuna people. So enough she and you could go to page 10. I know I jump all over the place, Christy. Enough she introduction is say after 1200 AD, the Caribs arrived in the Lesser Antilles from southeastern South America. They dominated the Arawaks, taking the women as wives and men as slaves. I don't know why in 2024 Auntie Myrtle still use the word slaves as opposed to enslaved. By the 1600s, the Caribs, Arawaks on St. Vincent had already intermarried with runaway enslaved, resulted in two groups, the Black Caribs and Yellow Caribs. So she talked about presently, although Black Caribs have Black features, they speak a language that is primarily Amerindian, a mixture of both Caribs and Arawakan languages. So my understanding is one of the benchmarks why Garifuna people claim indigenousness, that because of some of the cultural traits from the indigenous Kalinago people. Now remember now, you still have Kalinago people on the island of Dominica. So I'm very curious to hear, I really want to get somebody knowledgeable from Dominica, one Kalinago person, to tell me what for their oral stories say about Garifuna people, because Garifuna oral stories say and research that our part then come from. So I really want to hear more about that link. Now, as it relates to what I never know as well, is that the story I hear over and over again is that when Garifuna people left St. Vincent, I never know nobody left behind. So in the past few weeks, the first time I hear that, and that could be, let's see, that was a cultural survival story as well. Make us say which one that was, Christy. The Caribs, is it the Caribs of Dominica? Let's see if it's that one, or is it, no, I think it's this one. The one that says, no, which one is it? I have several cultural survival stories here. It's the one that talks about the Garifuna people. Is it this one? Aye. But in the cultural survival story, and I found that, was it on page 44? In the Garifuna Nation Across Borders, the first time I found out that there were Garifuna people who stayed on the island of St. Vincent. The cultural survival story is the Caribs of Dominica land rights. Yeah, here it is, the Caribs of Dominica. And it says is it this one? No, the other one there. It won't come to me. In the meantime, I go to another source, the Garifuna Nation Across Borders. On page 44, it says, I was one sentence that I read, as sequel, the few remaining in St. Vincent were banned from engaging in any political activity. Activity. I never know, and the few people I talk to said they never know, that when Garifuna people were exiled from St. Vincent to Balisaw, that there were some who were left behind in St. Vincent. There were some who were left behind in St. Vincent. And the ones who were left behind in St. Vincent, then give them land. So it's the, let's see, the Caribs of Dominica. Anyways. So the points that I make today, that for definitely verify with visual maps where the ancestresses and ancestors of Garifuna people came from. They're not the first time that I would hate, but having an opportunity to see the maps, for trace coming from South America to the Lesser Antilles, like St. Vincent and Dominica, 1,000 years before the murdering Christopher Columbus and European crew come. And then you had people who were carrying speakers. And that, I mean, one of the things that really caused a lot of confusion, me and one of my sisters agree, is the use of the word Carib. Because you don't know, they would say red Caribs, they would say black Caribs. Again, that's not a word where acceptable for describe indigenous people. So here, so you would hear Garifuna people say they come from the Kalinago people. And I want to share this story because this is very important as far as the carrying language. It's a one in the book it says Carib, but they mean indigenous Kalinago people. That when they start to attack the bigger islands, remember they come from South America, they start to attack the bigger islands and then deplete the coastal areas of crab, lobster, and sea turtle. The Arawak women, because remember them did it first, moved deeper into the mountains for saving crops. Kalinagos or Carib indigenous people had one tribal social political organization. So the way for them community organize, then basically the egalitarian. That means they don't have this patriarchal system where, you know, either the man run everything, we are the head of the household. There was more equity in the Kalinago ways of living. But it said, but during war, when they win a war, it means that they had more political prestige and the man they were own and sail the canoe. When they win, they'll take the women, father and grandfather as spouses. It goes on to say that after repeated incursions, the Arawak population of the Lesser Antilles was defeated. So that they wipe out the Arawak population. They said the men were exterminated and the women get converted into members of one new Carib Arawak society through marriage. So a new group formed, right? It says the Garifuna linguistic structure, 43% of which is of Arawak origin, reflects this historical background, resulting, for example, in women and men referring to themselves using different expressions of Arawak origin for women and of Carib origin for men. So very clear on, for example, the language, like the Garifuna language that's spoken now, where part that come from. One other thing where I never know, what I find out, is that the indigenous Arawak people catch feelings about the Kalinagos people, and then not the Kalinagos people. Remember we had African people there as well. So you have Arawak, Kalinagos, Arawak they wipe out, Kalinagos and African descendants from the continent of Africa, and enslaved people who run like from Barbados because of then trade winds. So you have the African and the Kalinagos. That's where the Garifuna come from. I never know that the Kalinagos people catch feelings about the African people because they quickly outnumbered them on the island. And they really had issues with them. I never know that. Another thing where I find interesting, Nancy Gonzalez, that one of the people where she has done a lot of research on Garifuna people. And I thought this was interesting as well. Make I see if I could find it. Before I go to Nancy Gonzalez, I'm going to Aondofe Iyo from the book Towards Understanding Belize's Multicultural History and Identity. And on page 73, because it's also important to understand that not all Garifuna people lead with their indigenousness. You have groups of Garifuna people will lead with their Africanness, because when you look for Garifuna people, and that you see it in a lot of literature, they look like identifiable African people racialized as black people. They don't look like people who have a mixture, which I think interesting considering the Kalinago descendants, they still live in Dominica and they look like indigenous Kalinago people. They look like, so anyways, this way, so you have like the organization where the elder who is now a spirit, Brother Aranda, he started World Garifuna Organization. Then lead with the Fahi organization, which was smaller than the NGO, led with their Africanness. And this is in the literature as well. And then you have like Ofrane, the Black Fraternal Organization of Honduras, they lead with for their Africanness. Whereas NGC, National Garifuna Council, not deny their Africanness, but they don't lead with their Africanness. So I thought what of interest to me, I find two sources will say why the Garifuna people never lead with the Africanness, why they lead with the indigenousness. So according to this Towards Understanding Belize's Multicultural History and Identity, Joseph Ernest Andofe Iyo, on page 73 in chapter 1, I'll read directly for only one paragraph. It said, why, one may ask, didn't the writer compare the black Caribs to the Creole in the British settlement? To answer this question, we may have to critically examine the nature of enslavery and the impact of this institution on the African psyche. Now, the media used the words enslave, because it was a condition. Somebody did this to another group of people. They never even look for African descendants racialized as black people as human beings. They think of them as chattel, as property. And they use Christianity, one of the main tools that they use for enslaved people. And the Christian church was deeply involved in owning, like you could own and people. But no worry, tomorrow from 10:30 to 12, we have back ISCR niche director Rolanda Kokom and Brother Giovanni. Giovanni name just slipped my mind. Forget the last name. But they big guests, they finished the conversation when I start last week, when I bring evidence-based conversation from the archives, for example, talking about African descendants racialized as black people in Belize. So I'm tuning tomorrow, XTV, Crumb Radio, XTV YouTube, XTV Belize YouTube, XTV Belize Facebook. Anyways, so this paragraph said, to answer this question, we may have to critically examine the nature of slavery and the impact of this institution for the American psyche, for the African psyche. It's possible that enslaved people will escape established Maroon communities alongside the indigenous people, may find ways to avoid going back into slavery and then deny being African, that may a way to achieve this. So make I run that down again. That one of the reasons why when Africans and majority of these African people would not have been enslaved, as in they never had no plantation to work. But from cited sources, and they have different versions, were enslaved vessels leaving from, what some of them say Guinea, leaving from the continent of Africa. The people are mutinied, the current run wrong at St. Vincent, and that's how the bulk of African descendants racialized as African people get at St. Vincent. And then you had some free people and some enslaved people from like one island like Barbados were gone at St. Vincent. But the bulk of the people were the African descendants. From the research where I said, I always open to learn something different, and you could correct me, show me new evidence, I open to it. And I just said that in 2024, time passed, long time, for we have their conversation publicly outside of the European singular narrative of whatever they tell it. So like one singular narrative would be, we never know that there were Garifuna people who get left at St. Vincent after the majority of them may get exiled to Balaso. That is something we never know. But the people that want to do this research long time, we know that. So the question is, why they not talk it? Every time there's Garifuna settlement there, like you could bet there and come and say the same Sankey every single time. Garifuna people come in at 1802, Garifuna people come in at 1823. But the details will really matter, because this form people identity, that because one lot we don't know ourselves authentically, because if we did, we'd have more courage, we'd have more confidence, we'd have move different, we'd have treat each other differently, because we don't know ourselves, and only we, but not know ourselves, but we have to take the responsibility, and that's why big respect I was still as Zinc Fence, they back my bones and family, because Zinc Fence did this work for 55 plus years. Remember now? Mandela Newspaper 55 years, Crumb Radio 35 years, Ubada Educational Foundation 28 years, XTV 21 years, Pan TV December, and I think 25 years because I start off start WB in particular started off on radio at Crumb Radio. Anyways, so it go on to say that who was it? It says it will be practical and pragmatic as a way for surviving in our hostile world. That African descendants no one be in our enslavement status or in our servitude status. And then he say, Palasa tends to support this view as he tells us that, quote, the Garifuna are the descendants of escapees from slavery who lived among the Carib Indians on the island of St. Vincent. There they assumed the cultural umbrage of the Indians as a means of distancing themselves from slavery and blackness. So there you have it. Now we have another source. This would be the 11 o'clock. Allow me a few more minutes. I just want to share the source from Nancy Gonzalez. She's a European who has done a lot of research on Garifuna people. Oh, give thanks. I have to thank the African ancestors who did with me. Okay, on page 189 of the Garifuna Nation Across Borders, Essays in Social Anthropology, edited by Elder Joseph O. Palacio. This is what he says. According to some research, such as Nancy L. Gonzalez, 1991, the emphasis on the indigenous aspect of the Garifuna identity maybe originated in the colonial period in St. Vincent, when it was in the interest of the Black Caribs to stress the Amerindian character, who make them not get considered as fugitive enslaved but free people. Obviously, he said they never want to go back to the conditions where the ancestors, ancestresses escaped from, and this lead to make them emphasize the external signs of the indigenous character, such as body painting or cranial deformation. It seems that they're even smoothing down their hair with palm oil. So make I run that again so we get that. For survival purposes, the ancestors of Garifuna people, who would be a mixture of African and indigenous people, Kalinaga people, it illogical to say that they wouldn't have lead with the Africanness, even though you could look on there and say African people, and they more than they were indigenous people eventually, that they've taken some of the characteristics of the indigenous people. So the indigenous people, they say when the children born, they were put to tie on board on their forehead. So what part, instead of we tend to have one curve in our forehead, they would have make it flat from birth to make the child forehead wouldn't have this curve, it'll be a more flat forehead. And that some of the African people who mix with indigenous people do the same thing. And in one source it say you could actually look for, well, when you look for the Garifuna people, you look for other people with African descendants who identify as Garifuna, that's something where come and say distinctly that their foreign look different. So I mean, one of the things we can do. One other thing would be the language, for example. The indigenous people are known for them paint themselves with, I forget what I think I would, but one of the things when I mix the paint with that kinep, I thought that was interesting. And some of the African descendants who mix with indigenous people would have paint themselves with it as well. But the reason why they lead with the indigenousness at that time, that because they don't want get mistaken for just one another African descendants and then be put into enslavement status. They wanted to be free people. So I think that a big reveal as to back then why they would not have, why they not lead with the indigenousness and not the Africanness. One of the things where I find interesting, and I know I'll take advantage of because Christy said we could go over time. One of the things where I find interesting as well is how NGC as an organization, and they have another another generation want to lead NGC now. That's what I look forward to next Sunday, which would be the 8th, I believe. Like I say, next Sunday, I think next Sunday next Sunday, yeah, the 8th. A fashioner, I forget how to pronounce the fashioner last name. Anyways, Ashimi for be the guest last week for this Garifuna series. I never come. She and be the guest on Sunday review next Sunday. So we have an hour and a half a reason because this is another generation of Garifuna people who are in a leadership position for the National Garifuna Council. So for flesh out some of these conversations, she's a lecturer, writer, Garifuna woman, and I like to it. And for talk about how come these stories not come out publicly, like at least when Garifuna Awareness Day on November 19th, there was opportunity for share. So this knowledge today, it did there for long. I just happened to do the research, or to know me. I get excited when I find African people that one of my biases, and I'm glad I work with us, with the people and we have the platform where I can run content and listen. Well, African people will oftentimes not get centered as human beings. We find out the everyday liberty and joys and struggles. And for make we still there, make I tell you about our story. Because this is what inspire we. So we learn lessons from them. This is what we learn whenever I work for them, make we not do it again. And so I look forward to that conversation with her. But make I go ahead and close out. Make I say if I touch the points there. What important, I mean, want to make sure we trace where Garifuna people and come from. With maps, so we have one visual, and we totally overstand that. For overstand that there were some people who were left behind in St. Vincent. I still not find, Krista, before I go, if you could, what is it? It's the, I know how I find it because I sent it to, I sent it to other people. Another thing where are the two? One time I find things all hours of the night and day, I share it with other people who I know would have an interest, and then I look forward to for the feedback on it as well. This is the one, but I think I keep thinking that this is another one where they look for. Let's see. Yeah, here you go. Krista, it is that one. The Caribs of Dominica, Land Rights and Ethnic Consciousness. I keep thinking that one, but it is that one. But I'm going to have to go down further in the paragraph. And this the way it say, where it is. It's paragraph, I think 3. In 1797, 5,080 Caribs, the majority of St. Vincent's population, were forcibly removed from the island by British troops and ever to Roatan Island, thanks Christy, off the coast of the Republic of Honduras. The Garifunas of Belize are their direct descendants today. The few Caribs who remained on St. Vincent were allocated 233 acres by the British government for their subsistence. And then it goes on. No, at no point did I know that not only were that there were Garifuna people who left by St. Vincent, but that the British government then gave them 233 acres of land. I never know that. Anyways, make I go ahead and close out. I want to buy tamales. I hear the tamales person to ring their belly. If I don't know how to close out, I can't give me tamales today. Just to be transparent. I definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in. The show, I repeat, what I repeat today, Christy? I repeat for XTV Belize, for XTV, a local channel. I want to thank Christy Flowers for all the work you do on Christy, no matter what. 5:30 today, the show on repeat on XTV local channel. You could go listen to it anytime at YouTube, XTV Belize, and XTV Belize Facebook page. I want to give thanks to my African ancestors and ancestors who stay with me, who guide me, to my inner circle, who hang in there with me. Thank you. Big thanks to Zinc Fence. January tomorrow for Sunday review. Until then, only the people are save the people.